All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist, in for Phil Sanchez. Israel's new Consul General to the Midwest tells me the ceasefire in Gaza that President Donald Trump negotiated depends on dismantling Hamas. Elad Strohmayer took the reins at the Israeli consulate in Chicago last month. I talked to him exclusively on the day the ceasefire began and all living Israeli hostages were released. It's his first interview with Indianapolis media since he assumed his post. And joining us now is Elad Strohmayer, the Consul General of Israel to the Midwest. Mr. Consul General, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Garrett.
What was it like for you watching those remaining living hostages finally come home for their families?
You know, it was such an emotional day, straining day, with mixed feelings of joy that these 20 hostages are finally reunited with their families after longer than 2 years that they've been in captivity, but also a lot of pain and grief for all those who we lost, 1,200 Israelis, 900 soldiers, and still 28 hostages that were killed, and 4 of them are just being retrieved and returned to Israel, but 24 are still held in captivity by Hamas, and their families can't wait to reunite with them as well so that they give them a proper burial in Israel. So it's been a roller coaster of emotion from joy and happiness to pain and sorrow. And I was glued all night because of the time differences. I stayed up until 4 a.m. watching the newscast in TV, and I was tearing up like with all Israelis for this joyous moment.
That does lead me to my next question. How confident are you that Hamas will release the remains of those remaining deceased hostages? That includes 2 American Israelis, Itai Chen and Omer Nutra.
Yes, Omer and Itai, they need to be released. Everyone needs to be released. You know, I don't trust Hamas. Hamas is a murderous terrorist organization that invaded Israel on October 7th, 2 years ago, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, men, women, children, elderly, in their beds, and kidnapped more than 250 people. So I don't have any confidence with Hamas. The confidence that I have is that this ceasefire plan was proposed by President Trump, by the United States, endorsed by Israel, by Arab countries that Israel has diplomatic relations with, and Arab countries that Israel doesn't have diplomatic relations with, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar. And I think altogether, if they put pressure on Hamas, they can release all the remaining bodies of the hostages. So I don't trust Hamas. I trust the international community to put the pressure on Hamas.
How significant was it that President Trump addressed the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, in person on this occasion?
It was very significant because what we've seen and what we're seeing today is maybe the beginning of a new dawn of change in the Middle East, because afterwards with the peace summit that President Trump did, I hope that change can happen. You know, we had the Abraham Accords, the normalization agreements between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco 5 years ago. And we hope to expand this normalization, to expand these peace ties with other countries. And I hope that now that Hamas is out of the picture, we can do that. I said from day one, Israel didn't choose this war. It started because of Hamas, and it could have ended only if Hamas would lay down his arms and release all the hostages. And this is exactly what this ceasefire is doing. Now we're seeing the hostages are released, and also there is a commitment by all actors that Hamas will not rearm itself and won't control Gaza. We won't allow that. And when that happens, that can open a path for a new regional change. And this is exactly the vision that the president portrayed in his speech in the Knesset today.
Right now, how confident are you that these negotiations will lead to a lasting peace and it won't be simply a repeat of, say, the Oslo Accords, for example?
I want to say I'm hopeful. I want to say I'm hopeful because this plan is different. It's based on recognition of Israel by other countries. And we see the strong and warm ties we have with Bahrain and with the UAE. These ties went through challenges in the past 2 years of the war in Gaza. And yet these ties have remained. Our relationships have endured these challenges. And I believe that more countries want to do that. And there is another element in the picture, which is Iran. Iran is the malicious force in the Middle East. They're sponsoring Hamas. They're funding Hamas. They're supporting Hezbollah and funding Hezbollah. The Houthis, all the destabilizing actors in the region are supported by Iran. And countries are fearsome of Iran. And when we come together, all the moderates in the Middle East, like UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, we can be a force to be reckoned with Iran. And this is why I'm hopeful that now we have common interest and shared understanding that we need to change the Middle East for the better.
What's it going to take to make sure these negotiations work?
I think it needs to have resolve of the leadership and determination to make it happen. And there needs to be pressure on Hamas, because the next phase right now is after they release all the hostages, including the ones that right now they claim that they cannot release. They need to release all of them. That's not negotiable at all. That's something that they agreed upon. But after that, in the next phase, we need to talk about the mechanism, how to make sure that Hamas is demilitarized and that they don't control Gaza, and who controls Gaza instead, that Palestinians would control their own life with the support of all the international actors. And that's what the next phase is going to be about. And we need to be resolved. And we need to be determined to make sure Hamas won't be there. By the way, it's not just to the benefit of Israel. It's to the benefit of the Palestinian people. Hamas is the source of problem for the Palestinian people as well. We saw yesterday footage coming out of Gaza that Hamas went back to areas that the IDF has withdraw from, and lynching Palestinians just because they thought that they collaborated with Israel. Hamas is a threat to Israel. Hamas is a threat to the Palestinian people, and it needs to be eliminated. So we need to be resolved. And if we come to that conclusion and we make that happen, then we'll be successful.
That does lead me into my next question. President Trump's plan would put Gaza under the control of a Palestinian committee and an international security force. Israeli forces are beginning to withdraw in accordance with that plan, and it opens the door to Palestinian statehood. Are Israelis okay with this? Do you have any concerns that you're being cut out of any of the decision-making?
We're not cut out from any decision making. We're very much coordinated with President Trump and his administration and with all other countries. I think it's too preliminary to talk about a Palestinian state. Right now, we want to make sure that no one has the ability to threaten Israel. If you're going to create a Palestinian state right now, it's going to be a duplicate of what we've seen in Gaza, in the West Bank, and then more communities are threatened, and we can have October 7th all over again. We need to make sure that we have security, we have peace, and I want Palestinians to have better life as well. This is why this consortium of Palestinian leadership with international support is the right path to move forward. We will maintain security perimeter in the Gaza Strip to make sure our borders are safe. That's also part of the plan, and it's something that is very important for us because we have communities along the border that were invaded and slaughtered and kidnapped, and they want to be sure that they're safe before they're coming back home.
About 200 U.S. troops will run a civil military coordination center in Israel. What can you tell us about what those troops will do? And will they be directly involved in Israel's internal security operations?
I think it's preliminary to say because these are still the things to be discussed in the phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement. Israel from day one has said that we're able to defend ourselves and protect ourselves, and we've always have done that. We've done that in the wake of the threats from Hamas, from Hezbollah, from the Houthis, even with Iran. We did the share work in Iran, and then the United States came and helped with the final blow. We don't want to jeopardize American troops. We'll defend ourselves by our own, and we'll do that with the support and the friendship that we get from the United States of America, our greatest friend and ally.
Elad Strohmayer is the Israeli Consul General to the Midwest. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Garrett.
Coming up, President Trump's border czar visits Indiana. Why he wants state lawmakers to pass a sweeping immigration enforcement bill. Welcome back. President Trump's border czar is urging state lawmakers to pass a sweeping immigration enforcement bill next session. Tom Homan headlined an event that also included Governor Mike Braun and Attorney General Todd Rokita. Homan maintains the Trump administration is targeting those who pose an actual criminal threat.
Last time I looked at the data, right around 70% of everybody ICE arrests is a criminal. Either a criminal conviction or pending criminal charges, which means we found them in the jail. Who are the other 30%? Many of them are final orders deportation. They had due process at great taxpayer expense.
Neither the public nor the media were allowed inside the House chamber to watch the speech. The Attorney General's office streamed it on social media. State Representative J.D. Prescott says he plans to introduce a new version of a bill he filed this past session. It would penalize employers who knowingly employ or recruit someone who's in the country illegally. It would require the Attorney General to defend any agency from a civil lawsuit involving enforcing immigration detainers. And it would increase citizenship reporting requirements for public assistance programs, such as Medicaid. Amy Guzman is a naturalized citizen from Colombia. She says all of this feels like a deliberate effort to target all immigrants.
I mean, this is a traumatizing thing for everyone. Not only, citizens, non-citizens, whether you're Latino or not, or any type of immigrant. It is a traumatizing thing. It is something that, causes us to kind of go into fight or flight and feel like, hey, we've got to be out here. We've got to speak out. We've got to do whatever we can to protest this.
Republican lawmakers, including Prescott, turned down News 8's requests for an on-camera interview. Homan did not answer reporters' questions as he left. Prescott sent a statement Tuesday evening. He says, today's discussion on immigration policy is about ensuring Indiana takes action when the federal government can't. We must have fair, consistent enforcement that prioritizes public safety and supports our law enforcement officers who are doing their jobs every day. Similar legislation passed the House last year but died in the Senate. Homan says federal law limits how much he can lobby for the bill, but he wants lawmakers to keep pushing.
Whatever you can do, state of Indiana, to help us make Indiana safer. I'm not saying every illegal alien is a public safety threat, but many are. Help us, because every public safety threat we remove to this country makes your neighborhood safer.
Lawmakers will assemble for Organization Day early next month. We expect that's when we'll learn what their priority legislation will be. The legislative session itself begins in January. Coming up, Indiana's best political team on a utility settlement that could raise residential rates more than commercial ones. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Lindsay Haake. Ladies, welcome to you both. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's begin with AES Indiana's settlement with the city of Indianapolis. It would raise residential utility rates by about 6.5%. That's roughly double the hike that would go into effect for commercial businesses. That's still much less than AES originally requested, and it blocks any further rate increases until 2030. Whitley, the state's utility consumer council is against this, as are consumer watchdog groups. Governor Mike Braun has come out strongly against utility bill hikes, and more than half of the city-county council has signed on to a joint statement condemning this deal. What are the chances the IURC rejects this?
I'm hopeful that the chances are high that the IURC does reject this proposal because I think it's void of what the people want. You've seen in the Braun administration that he's done a complete overhaul when it comes to making sure that utilities are affordable in the state of Indiana. You've also seen that he's attempting to get new leadership on the IURC board, as well as making sure that things are supposed to be affordable. And when you see the way in which this is going to impact commercial businesses versus everyday people on Main Street, that's a big problem. I'm glad to see that the council is speaking out about it, but I'm disappointed in the Hogsett administration for the way in which this proposal came about that seems to be not only just void of the people's interests, but also those on the council as well.
Lindsay, how unusual is it to see this sort of alignment between the Braun administration and consumer/environmental advocacy groups, and what does that say about this issue?
Yeah, obviously, this has happened before where you've had alignment, strange bedfellows, right? Very complicated issues make for strange bedfellows. And full disclosure, I am obviously working for Citizens Action Coalition. I worked with them for a long time on utility issues, so we have intervened in the case. And so when you look at these, and there's a long runway to go yet on this issue, a lot from not just the fact that we have 3 vacancies on the IURC right now, so new people, you'll have a huge transition into new thought leadership on that commission, and then you've also got time yet where you'll have a lot of political influence on this case. It's a proposed settlement. It is not decided, and it is not in any way, shape, or form done. It has to go through another proposal or process at the IURC where they have hearings and discovery and all that. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but yeah, it's a strange bedfellows on utility issues for sure.
Yeah. So let's turn to Tom Homan's visit to Indianapolis. Lindsay, could a bill like the one state lawmakers are pushing open up the state to lawsuits in federal court?
Yes, that has happened before. Again, another precedent with passing legislation that has been ruled unconstitutional. Happens all the time, sadly. But yeah, I do think it will end up positioning Indiana poorly to be on the wrong side of this issue if they do end up passing anything. That said, you know, there's the reason for this moving forward is states' rights. You know, everyone wants everyone in their own area to have the laws that they want protecting them. And so this is a huge conversation that I'm really eager to see how it plays out. There will be a lot to say about that topic at the legislature.
Whitley, does this suggest a new strategy from the Trump administration on immigration?
I will say it is a new strategy, but the mission has always been the same. When Trump ran for office, he was going to crack down on immigration, going to crack down on the southern border, and going to deport as many people as possible out of this country. And so the mission is the same, but the mode is a little bit different. And I do think when you look at when Governor Braun ran, he ran and said that he was going to help the Trump administration because, to be quite honest, illegal immigration impacts Hoosiers. It impacts public safety, and it puts a drain and a strain on the resources that we have here. And so helping to follow through with that and do what's possible within the state's purview to be able to do, I think, is in the best interest of Hoosiers.
Let's turn to the biggest international story of the week, and that is, of course, the ceasefire in Gaza and the release of all of the remaining Israeli hostages, along with some of those who were killed. Whitley, Hamas claims as of right now that it cannot release the bodies of 19 of those deceased hostages. Could that lead the whole deal to collapse?
I don't think it could lead the deal to collapse, but what I believe it's signaling is that the way in which they were murdered or killed is not a way that they're able to return them, and that is really what is sad. And there won't be closure for the families, able to have funerals or different things like that, and really be able to have a full grieving process. I am pleased that we finally have a deal that does strike peace. However, really the closure necessary for all of this, I think, is far from now.
Lindsay, I'd like your thoughts as well, but also President Trump has said that about 200 he's threatened to go after Hamas if they don't disarm, though he later said U.S. troops would not be involved. Now, as we heard in that interview, there are about 200 troops that will be working in a civil military coordination center. Will he be able to keep U.S. troops out of Gaza if this thing collapses?
Yeah, I just don't, I have no idea. I'm with in that interview, it was so apparent that the trust component is just not there. And frankly, Hamas has never been able to honor a ceasefire before, so it's not looking great, but I have confidence. And this past week was a very bittersweet week for the Jewish community, where they were ready to mark the second anniversary of the October 7th massacre, and they in turn changed and shifted and acknowledged that they're so thankful for the return of the hostages, but yet we still have many remains yet to be, as you pointed out, yet to be returned. I really hope this does not lead to a further escalation of violence.
I've got a little over a minute left here. I want to briefly address the layoffs at the U.S. Department of Education. Nearly all of them affect offices that serve children with disabilities. Lindsay, can the states take up the slack on this? Got about 1 minute.
No, I just don't see how. You've already had such a degradation of services, entitlements, and this is something that advocates have been working on for for months, and will continue working on it as they have for decades.
Whitley, I'll give you the last word. Is there a risk here that we return to how things were for students with disabilities pre-1970s, when a lot of them, frankly, just did not get an education, period?
I mean, that is definitely not what we're hoping for, but if we can crack the Schumer shutdown, maybe we can get a government that is working for the people.
All right. Lindsay and Whitley, thank you both so much for coming in this week. We'll look forward to having you on again soon, and we will be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning, as always, at 9:30. And be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. You'll find full shows there, along with extended interviews with members of Congress, statewide elected officials, and even occasionally international leaders. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.